Some major developments to talk about here on the Broncos Breakdown that have gone on at Broncos training camp. Welcome in Broncos Country to the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. My name is Moose. Right off the jump, I want to apologize for my sound today. If you hear me coughing a little bit, I'm a little under the weather, but that doesn't mean that I can't deliver some Broncos content to you here on a Monday. The major news that we have to talk about is the Drew Sanders injury. And the injury bug has apparently bit one more time. He is now a tendon injury in his foot. It's been reported by multiple Broncos reporters and Ian Rappaport. And he will be out for, quote, an extended period of time. Undisclosed. We don't know exactly how many weeks that's going to be, but it is reasonably assumed, at least from all the reports that we're reading, that he will not be available Week 1 against the Tennessee Titans. Zach Stevens was the first one to at least acknowledge the carting off late on Saturday, that he got taken into the locker room on a cart. Further reports and reading indicated that he could not put a lot of weight on his leg and on his foot, and that's never a good sign, right? If you're gingerly walking off and you have to be helped in a cart, don't want to get into the semantics of being carted off or riding in a cart, but if you are struggling to put weight on your limb, it's not a good sign. Sports Illustrated captured a lot of different thoughts and emotions from different Broncos fans, in my opinion, with their most recent article. They said Sanders suffered an Achilles injury during the off-season workouts last year, which led him to the beginning of the 2024 campaign on the PUP list. He eventually made it onto the roster, but only appeared in 4 games down the stretch, totaling just 8 tackles and 1 sack. From the time the 2025 offseason began, the Broncos brass was singing Sanders' praises, with GM George Paton voicing his belief that the linebacker has a starter's future in Denver. All Sanders needed to do was get a little bit of luck and not get bit by that injury bug, but didn't happen. So let's talk about those injuries. Last year, the Achilles, really, really bad. The good news, and the silver lining, I guess you could kind of look at when it comes to these injuries, is that it isn't an Achilles injury, which would keep him out for the entirety of the year and quite possibly could end his career. The problem now being that Sanders is officially an injury-prone player. And look, I take no joy in saying this, but it is time to start having an uncomfortable conversation about Drew Sanders' future at Mile High. With him now being considered an injury-prone player, the conversations now have to be had about potentially keeping him on the roster. Is he now a cut candidate? I don't think you have to go that far, at least right now. I think that might be a little bit extreme. But with the talent that the Broncos currently have at the linebacker position and the depth that they have shown and the production that they've seen from guys like Dondre Tillman, Justin Stranad, and others, Alex Singleton now comes back healthy. We signed Dre Greenlaw in free agency. Drew Sanders could be considered expendable. My biggest fear when I took over the channel, and I've said this multiple times while talking about the Broncos linebackers, was this was the biggest glaring problem, I should say, for the Broncos, was this depth. Not because they didn't have the depth and the talent, but because of the injuries that a lot of the players that are currently in the linebacker room had, that became a big question mark. Will one of those guys go down? My original statement was it is a matter of when, not if. And then the first domino falls with Drew Sanders. Now, again, this could be blown out of proportion. I could be saying that there's no issues come week 3 or week 4. That's an entire possibility. But I do think it is at least beneficial for the Broncos to at least explore some potential replacements. And producer Apple, we're just going to go through these at the exact same time here. So we're going to start with Kaiser White. No, go back to the first one. Yeah, you're good. And then we're just going to go through these all at the same time. So we're going to start with Kaiser White, or Kaiser White, however you want to pronounce it, who was with the Cardinals last year, a multi-year starter for the Arizona Cardinals and the Los Angeles Chargers for a time, a good plug-and-play player, not going to break the bank and not going to, break the mold of the linebacker position, but could be that sweet veteran presence that you're looking for. Second on this list, Eric Kendricks. These are guys that, by the way, I would sign right now. Like, if they called, I'm putting pen to paper because they've had proven success at the linebacker position, with probably the most notable guy that I would at least sign on this list being Josie Jewell. the linebacker from Carolina, who just got released, by the way, about 6 days ago from the Carolina Panthers. You could push him across, Alper, if you want. There you go. Yeah, he's probably the guy on this list that I would be most intrigued in signing, at least right this moment. But Kaiser White and Eric Kendricks would also make a very fine veteran presence in the locker room. And again, you could be a Broncos fan that says we don't need to go out and sign another guy and, hit the cap again when we have guys like Justin Stranad available to step in as the next man up. And that's fine. However, the last thing that you want to see, and fingers crossed, is another starter like Greenlaw or Singleton go down, and then you really don't have much. So I'll ask you this, going back to Drew Sanders. Is it time to move on from Drew Sanders? I don't think quite yet. I'm going to say no, but the thoughts have definitely got to start percolating now in at least George Payton's mind and Sean Payton's mind, because this is 2 years in a row with some severe injuries. At what point do you just say, the juice ain't worth the squeeze? Now, coming up here, some more training camp news that I want to get into. And before we do that, I do want to give a major shout out to our friends over at Ethos. Life insurance is one of the most important investments that you can make in your family. And that's where our friends from Ethos come in. Look, guys, as somebody who is going to be getting married here in just about 5 weeks, I have not stopped thinking about my future. Kids are going to start coming for me and my fiance, and that's where being protected has me covered, and that's why I trust Ethos. They are revolutionizing the insurance industry with a 100% online process and can provide protection for you and your loved ones. You can get life insurance in as little as 10 minutes. Ethos has no medical exams, just a few easy health questions online. They're 100% online and hassle-free. It makes the process so easy to apply, and you can get same-day coverage without ever leaving your house. Like I said, when the kids start coming, I've got to make sure that they're protected. And you can protect your family as well with life insurance from Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That's ethos.com/NFL Daily. Again, it's 100% online. And all you have to do is answer a few easy health-related questions. Again, protect your family with life insurance from Ethos. Your free quote is at Ethos right now at ethos.com. That's ethos.com/NFL Daily. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's going on at training camp. The positive news, right? We don't want to sit here and talk about all the negatives that have been going on, right, or surrounding Drew Sanders, because we know what we see. But the rest of the Broncos team seems to be shining, especially with some guys that could end up taking the next spot up. And Lavelle Bailey is one of the players that has had a really good training camp so far. So he could end up getting more looks in place of Drew Sanders. And Zach Stevens seems to echo that sentiment just like I just said right there. He did have a great start to camp and, signed on as a UDFA last year, so could end up finding his way onto the 53-man roster and put in some solid reps in case that Drew Sanders is out for longer than we think. Now, the pads do come on today, which is really, really cool to see. And I haven't decided yet if I want to make another video. I probably will later on today, just to give you guys a little bit extra Broncos news coming from training camp. But this is my favorite time of training camp because now you really get to see the offensive and defensive lines make some contact. That's the most important thing that you need to see from a lines perspective, because even Sean Payton came out and basically said, look, we can't really determine how the lines are going to play without pads and without contact because their role is limited, right? That's literally their entire job, is making contact every single play. So the guys that I'm at least most looking forward to seeing put on the pads, it's from a defensive perspective, Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, and, of course, everybody's favorite bench player, Malcolm Roach. And all three of these guys, I feel like are going to be instrumental in solidifying the defensive line here for the Denver Broncos. Same with DJ Jones. But, again, like, these are the guys that I can't wait to see throw on the pads and just start plowing through offensive linemen. Giggity. So before we get moving on with even more takeaways from the weekend, are you tuning in to our first preseason game? August 9th, you got to mark it down in your calendar. What is that? 12 days away? It is 12 days away. It is? No, it's a Saturday. It's a Saturday. You were close, though, very close. It is a Saturday. It's 12 days away. And if you are going to be tuning in for our very first preseason game, make sure you type me down in the comment section down below. So what are the major takeaways in case you are just joining us for the first time surrounding Broncos training camp news? Well, I kind of compiled everything from the weekend and from the week kind of together, and I piled it into a list of 3. So here's what you need to know. The secondary depth is shining in week 1. Brandon Jones came out and said, it's scary how much depth we have. I have not been a part of a team that has had this much depth, which is great to see. But one player in specific is really starting to make his presence felt, and that's Chris Abrams-Drain. Now, remember, this isn't a starting corner, right? We've got Riley Moss, you got Pat Surtain, Jaquan McMillan, Jahdae Barron, who've got that locked up. But it is great to see that some of the lower tier guys on the depth chart making plays. In specific, one play that was kind of the play of the weekend for Chris Abrams-Drain, which was this fade ball that went up to Pat Bryant from Bo Nix, looked like a touchdown, and at the last moment, Cad diving, knocking it out of the way, incomplete pass. You love to see it. Now let's talk a little bit more about the Broncos' defensive back depth chart, because I'll say it again, I've said it before, this is no-fly zone 2.0. And I am really interested to see the rotation that Sean and Vance Joseph have cooked up for week 1. Because in my opinion, it's going to be Pat Surtain, it's going to be Riley Moss, it's going to be Jaquan. Actually, you know what? No, I'm gonna pause that. That's on me. That's a bad move on Moosey's part. Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, and then on the inside is going to be Jahdae Barron. Sean Payton then came out again, was talking about how they're going to start him off at inside, but work him to the outside and see how he performs at CB2 on the outside. Either way, you are going to see a very, very competent and very, very aggressive defensive secondary with the additions now of Brandon Jones last year and Talanoa Hufanga this year. Number 2, Bo Nix should be firing you up. QB1, QB10, whatever you want to call him, he has really taken the next step, and that's great to see. He was quoted this weekend at the mic at the press conference saying, I want to be the best in the world. All NFL players should at least have that aspirations, but a lot of them don't. In fact, majority of them don't. Majority of them look at it like a job, right? It's a paycheck. They don't have any aspirations other than make the team, perform well, get my money, move on. But then there's the rare few, the guys that excel at the game, and Bo Nix seems to be one of those players that believes he is destined for greatness. And I think he is too. I think it's going to take a while. I think you've got to beat the best to become the best. But he is definitely showing, at least not only from a schematics and on-field perspective, but from an attitude perspective, he's taken that next step. Whereas last year I felt it was more like trying to learn the game, trying to figure out the speed, get acclimated to the NFL. Now it's like I'm ready to dominate, which is really, really cool to see. Last little takeaway here before we end today's video. 2 young wide receivers that have been standing out big time. Those being our guy, Troy Franklin, the other Oregon connection, and this year's 3rd-round draft pick, Pat Bryant. Specifically, Pat Bryant. Why? Every single quarterback on the Broncos depth chart is clearly gelling with him. And I think you will see very, very shortly, no offense to Devon Vele or Marvin Mims. I think Marvin Mims has had a really good camp as well. I really think Pat Bryant will be your wide receiver 2 halfway through the year. I'm staking my claim for that now just because of how we've seen the talent develop, how I believe it was overlooked, at least by me as well. I'm not afraid to admit that. Because he played at Illinois and because they're not known as a top-tier college football, powerhouse in the Big Ten. But Zach Stevens said it the best. This was the number 1 reposted tweet from him over the entire weekend. Quarterbacks are gravitating towards Pat Bryant. The ball just seems to find him. So I think very shortly you're going to see it's going to be Cortland Sutton as wide receiver 1, Pat Bryant as wide receiver 2, and then a combination of Marvin Mims and Devon Vele as wide receiver 3. Troy Franklin easily could step into that wide receiver 3 role. We have to just wait and see a little bit more. And we saw from the second half of last season, Troy Franklin kind of really come into his own as well. That is going to do it for us on today's episode. I might come back a little bit later and grace you with my presence once again. But if you want to find more Broncos content from me, I made it super easy for you at Moose_NFL for both Twitter and Instagram. Put that in the comments and description of today's video. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the fastest growing Broncos channel here on YouTube. We are very, very close to hitting 38,000 subscribers. That was a big oopsie on my part. Having a couple of those today. My name is Moose. Until next time, be cool.